Hello, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a Supreme Court judgment that truly changed everything. NALSA versus the Union of India. This decision didn't just tweak a law, it fundamentally reshaped how the Indian Constitution understands gender and identity itself.
So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at what the court called a moral failure that needed to be fixed. Then we'll get into the long fight for identity, see how the court reread our fundamental rights, unpack the incredible verdict, and finally, really understand why this judgment is still so important today.
You know, the judgment doesn't open with complicated legal jargon. It starts right here, with this really powerful admission. The court is basically saying, look, this isn't just about the law. It's about a deep human problem, a collective failure of empathy and understanding.
And this quote from activist Lakshmi Narayan Tripathi gets to the heart of it. Just imagine for a second if your legal identity didn't exist. As the court heard, it makes you invisible. You can't get an education, you can't get proper health care, you can't even get a job. It's a total denial of your basic rights. The court was also presented with stories that were just incredibly personal and painful, stories of violence and rejection. This makes it clear that this case wasn't some abstract legal argument. It was grounded in real-life suffering, often starting in the one place you're supposed to be safest, your own home.
And this testimony just shows the daily grind of harassment, the psychological toll it takes. It's not one single event, but a constant chipping away at a person's spirit. The court saw how this kind of pressure, this non-recognition, could literally push people to the edge.
So you see, what was brought before the court wasn't just a request to fix a legal blind spot. It was a plea to address what the court itself would come to call a moral failure of society.
Okay, so here's the core legal argument. The petitioners said that forcing someone into a gender box they don't belong in is a flat-out violation of their fundamental rights. And they pointed specifically to Article 14, which is our right to equality, and Article 21, the right to a life with dignity.
Now, to really grasp the court's final decision, we need to understand the groundwork it laid. It looked at two big things. First, what gender identity actually means, and second, the history of transgender communities here in India.
This is absolutely critical to the entire judgment. The court made it crystal clear, gender identity is not the same as the sex you were assigned at birth. It's about your own internal, deeply personal, and individual sense of who you are. And this timeline shows such a dramatic and tragic shift. The court recognized that historically, transgender communities were often part of the social fabric. But then, colonial laws like the Criminal Tribes Act of 1871 literally branded them as criminals. And even after that law was gone, that terrible stigma, that legal confusion, it just lingered for decades.
And you know, this judgment didn't happen in a vacuum. The court looked at what was happening globally, referencing things like the Yogyakarta principles. This showed that the idea of self-identifying your gender was becoming a global standard for basic human dignity.
Okay, so this brings us to the legal heart of the judgment. This is where the court did something truly brilliant. It took our fundamental rights and reinterpreted them, expanding their meaning to explicitly include and protect the transgender community.
Let's just walk through this, because this is where the magic happens. For Article 14, the right to equality, the court said the word person means every person, not just male or female. For Articles 15 and 16, it said discrimination based on sex isn't just about biology, it includes gender identity. For Article 19, freedom of expression, well, that includes expressing your gender. And the big one, Article 21, the right to a life with dignity, was found to include the fundamental right to have your gender identity legally recognized.
So after this incredible rereading of our Constitution, the court didn't just stop at theory. It delivered a verdict that was truly transformative and came with a clear set of instructions.
And this was the headline, the big one. For the very first time in Indian law, the country's highest court formally and legally recognized an identity beyond the male-female binary, creating the category of a third gender.
And the court didn't just say, okay, you exist now. It laid out a plan. This wasn't just symbolic. It mandated legal recognition based on what an individual says they are. It told the government to provide social welfare, and crucially, it ordered reservations to start making up for decades of injustice.
This right here, this is a total game changer in legal thinking. The court threw out the old, outdated biological test, which basically said your body parts at birth define you for life. And in its place, it brought in the psychological test, saying that legally, what matters most is your own internal psychological sense of who you are.
So let's bring it all together. Why are we still talking about a judgment from 2014?
What is its real, lasting impact on human rights law in India?
The ripples from NALSA spread out so far beyond just one community. It hammered home the principle that our fundamental rights are for everyone. It tore down the rigid, binary idea of gender in our legal system. It made self-determination the core principle, and it powerfully tied the very idea of identity to our constitutional right to live with dignity.
And in the end, this is the profound question the NALSA judgment leaves all of us with. It's a reminder that at the very core of all the laws and all the books is a simple, universal human need: to be seen, to be recognized, and to live with dignity. Thanks for watching the